My husband's coworker kept calling our home phone asking for Michael. My husband's name is David, and Michael is what his affair partner calls him. The first time it happened, I thought it was a wrong number. A woman's voice, professional but friendly, asked if Michael was available. I explained she had the wrong house. She apologized and hung up. The second time, I was more direct. There's no Michael here. You have the wrong number. She paused, then said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I must have written it down wrong." But the calls kept coming. Always the same woman. Always asking for Michael. I started recognizing her voice, the slight hesitation before she spoke, like she was reading from a script. After the sixth call, I stopped correcting her. I just hung up. That's when I noticed David's face whenever the phone rang. He'd freeze just for a second, before pretending to focus on whatever he was doing. His jaw would tighten. His eyes would flick to me, measuring my reaction. One evening, the phone rang during dinner. I let it go to voicemail. The woman's voice filled our kitchen through the speaker. "Hi, Michael. It's me. Just wanted to confirm our plans for tomorrow. Call me back." David's fork clattered against his plate. "Wrong number," he said too quickly. "Happens all the time at work, too. Some guy named Michael keeps getting my emails." I nodded, cutting my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces. The lie sat between us like a third person at the table. I started paying attention to the small things. How he'd angled his phone away from me when texting. How he'd started showering immediately when he got home from work. Something he'd never done in our 8 years of marriage. How he'd bought new cologne without mentioning it. How Tuesday nights became late meeting nights. How he'd started going to the gym at 5 a.m., though his membership card looked brand new when I found it in his wallet. I checked our phone records online. Dozens of calls to the same number, always during his commute or lunch break. Sometimes they'd last 40 minutes. Once for over an hour. I called it from a burner phone I bought at the convenience store. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Michael, I was just thinking about you." I hung up without saying a word. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. I cooked his favorite meals. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye. I asked about his day and pretended to believe his answers. I laughed at his jokes. I initiated intimacy twice, watching his face for guilt that never quite surfaced. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Screenshots of texts I glimpsed over his shoulder. Receipts for restaurants we'd never been to together. Credit card charges at hotels in our own city. A Valentine's Day purchase at a jewelry store. I never received jewelry that Valentine's Day. I hired someone to follow him on a Tuesday. The photos arrived the next morning. David's car parked outside a townhouse in the suburbs. David walking to the door with flowers. David being greeted by a brunette in yoga pants. David not leaving for 4 hours. Then last Tuesday, she called again. I answered. There was a long pause. "Is Michael there?" she asked, her voice less confident now. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice steady, "David isn't home right now, but I'd be happy to take a message." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, she whispered, "I think there's been a mistake," and disconnected. David came home an hour later. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he set down his briefcase. "We need to talk," he said. "I was waiting for that," I replied. I already knew what he was going to say. What I didn't know was what I'd found that afternoon while he was at work, hidden in the garage behind his tool chest. A second phone, with text messages that made my stomach turn. And one unread message from her that changed everything I thought I understood about who my husband really was. The phone was an old model, the kind you could buy at any gas station without a contract. I'd almost missed it, wedged behind a box of screws and wrapped in an oil-stained rag. The battery was at 8%. I unlocked it on my second try. His passcode was our wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The text thread with her went back 8 months. I sat on the concrete floor of our garage, scrolling through messages that detailed a relationship I hadn't known existed. Good morning texts, inside jokes, photos of meals they'd shared, but it was the recent messages that made my hands shake. Her, "When are you going to tell her?" David, "Soon, I promise." Her, "You've been saying that for months." David, "It's complicated. You know that." Her, "I'm tired of being your secret, Michael. I want a real life with you." I kept scrolling. There were messages about his mother, who I thought I knew well. Messages about his childhood, details he'd never shared with me. Messages about his real name, because David wasn't his real name. Michael was. The unread message had arrived that afternoon at 2:14 p.m. "I can't do this anymore. Either you tell your wife the truth tonight or I will. All of it. Who you really are. Why you're really with her. Everything." I heard the garage door starting to open. David must have come home. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked back into the house. He was in the living room, still in his work clothes, looking more terrified than I'd ever seen him. "Okay," he said. "I need to tell you something. And you're going to hate me, but I can't keep lying to you." I sat down on the couch. My hand stayed in my pocket, fingers wrapped around the burner phone. "Go ahead," I said. He took a deep breath. "There's someone else. I've been seeing her for 8 months. Her name is Claire and she works at my company and I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." I nodded slowly. "Okay." He blinked. "Okay? That's it? What do you want me to say, David?" He flinched when I said his name. "I don't know. I thought you'd yell or cry or throw something. I've known for weeks," I told him. "I hired someone to follow you. I've seen the photos. I know about the townhouse. I know about the Tuesday night meetings that aren't actually meetings." His face went from pale to gray. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see how long you'd keep lying to me," I said. "And I wanted to understand who I was actually married to." He sat down heavily in the armchair across from me. "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. Claire and we just connected and I tried to fight it, but..." "Stop," I said. "I don't want to hear about your connection." I pulled out the phone from my pocket and set it on the coffee table between us. "I want you to tell me about this." The color drained completely from his face. "Where did you find that?" "Garage, behind your tools." I scrolled through all of it, David. "Or should I call you Michael?" He looked like he might be sick. "You need to let me explain." "Then explain." I said. Explain why my husband of 8 years has been using a fake name. Explain why there are text messages on this phone about your mother who supposedly died before we met. Explain why Claire seems to think you have some kind of secret that you've been keeping from me. He put his head in his hands. His whole body was shaking. You're right, he said quietly. My name isn't David. It's Michael. Michael Harrison. David is my middle name, and my mother isn't dead. She lives in Oregon. I felt like the room was tilting. What? I changed my name legally when I was 25, he said. Before I met you. I had reasons. Good reasons. And I know I should have told you, but by the time we got serious, it felt too late. How do you explain something like that to someone you love? Try, I said. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. When I was 19, I was involved in something bad. Really bad. My family? We were into things that weren't legal. My father ran a business that laundered money. My uncle was worse. I won't go into details, but people got hurt. I didn't want any part of it, but when you grow up in that world, leaving isn't simple. I waited. The silence stretched between us. When I turned 24, federal agents raided my father's office. He continued. They arrested him, my uncle, and 4 other people. I wasn't charged with anything. I'd kept my hands clean mostly. But my name was everywhere. In the news. In court documents. Associated with crimes I didn't commit. I couldn't get a job. Couldn't move forward. Every background check flagged me as a Harrison, connected to the Harrison crime family. So you changed your name, I said. Yes. Legally. I became David Michael Harrison. Started going by David. Moved across the country. Started over. And I met you, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a normal person. Someone who could have a normal life. A normal marriage. I thought if I could just keep the past buried, we could be happy. And Claire knows all this. He nodded miserably. She worked for the FBI before she came to our company. She recognized me. We started talking and I told her everything because she already knew. And somewhere along the way we got close. Too close. I processed this information slowly. My entire marriage was built on a lie. The man I thought I knew didn't exist. How much of you is real? I asked. How much of our relationship is real? All of it, he said urgently. I love you. That's real. Everything I've felt for you is real. I just couldn't tell you about my past because I was afraid you'd leave me. So instead you lied to me for 8 years and had an affair with someone who knows the truth. He didn't have an answer for that. I stood up. I need you to leave. What? Pack a bag and go to a hotel. Or go to Claire's townhouse. I don't care. But I can't look at you right now. Please, he said. Can't we talk about this? There's nothing to talk about, I said. You're not who I thought you were. Our entire marriage is based on deception. I need time to think and I can't do that with you here. He stood slowly, moving toward the stairs. At the bottom step he turned back. For what it's worth, he said. I really did love you. I still do. Past tense noted, I replied. After he left, I sat in the quiet house and cried for the first time since this started. Not because I missed him, but because I'd wasted 8 years on someone who didn't respect me enough to tell me the truth. The next morning, I called Claire. She answered on the first ring. Hello? This is David's wife, I said. I think we should meet. There was a long pause. I'm so sorry, she said finally. I never wanted to hurt you. Save it. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street in an hour? I'll be there. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived. Mid-30s, brunette. Pretty in an understated way. She looked nervous. I ordered a black coffee and sat down across from her. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I need to understand something, I told her. How much of what he told me last night is true? She looked surprised. He told you? About his real name and his family in the federal raid. All of it. Is it true? She nodded. It's true. I worked the case, actually. I was a junior agent at the time, but I remember the Harrison family. Michael wasn't charged with anything. He was clean, but his name was Mud after his father and uncle went to prison, and you recognized him at work. Yes. I wasn't sure at first. He looks different now, but I ran his prints from a coffee cup and confirmed it. I confronted him and he broke down. He'd been carrying this secret for years. So you started an affair. She flinched. It wasn't supposed to be like that. We were just talking at first. He needed someone who understood what he'd been through, someone he could be honest with. And I'd left the FBI by then, so it wasn't a conflict of interest or anything. We just connected. You're the only person in his life who knows the truth, I said. That must feel special. She looked down at her coffee. I know how this looks. I know I'm the other woman, but I love him, and he loves me. He was going to leave you. We were planning a life together. We're planning? I asked, past tense. She met my eyes. He called me last night. Said he couldn't do it. Said he realized he still loved you and wanted to try to make it work. He asked me to back off. I felt something twist in my chest. Not jealousy. Something stranger. Relief mixed with anger. And what did you say? I told him I was done, she said. I'm not going to be someone's backup plan. I thought he was ready to build a real life, to stop hiding. But if he can't even be honest with his own wife, then he's not the man I thought he was. We sat in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Go ahead. Are you going to stay with him? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know who he is anymore. How do you build a marriage on honesty when the foundation is lies? She nodded. I get that. For what it's worth, I think the man you married does exist. He's just scared. Scared of being judged for his past. Scared of losing what he's built. Fear makes people do terrible things. That doesn't excuse what he did, I said. No, she agreed. It doesn't. I stood to leave. Thank you for meeting me. Wait, she said. There's something else you should know. Something he probably won't tell you. I sat back down. His father is getting out of prison next month. She said it quietly, like she was afraid of the words. He served 10 years of his 15-year sentence. Good behavior. David doesn't know? He knows. He got the notification last month. That's when things between us got serious. He's terrified. His father is going to come looking for him, and his father isn't a forgiving man. What do you mean? Michael testified against him at the trial. It was confidential, sealed testimony, but his father knows. That's the real reason he changed his name and moved. He wasn't just running from his past. He was running from his father's revenge. I felt cold. Is he in danger? Claire leaned forward. When I was working the case, we had credible threats against Michael's life. His father made it clear that he considered testimony from family to be the ultimate betrayal. We offered Michael witness protection, but he refused. Said he wanted a normal life, but the threats were real. And now his father is getting out. Yes. And Michael has been panicking. He thought if he could disappear completely, start over with me in a different city, use a completely different identity, he might be safe. That was the plan. We were going to leave together. Move somewhere his father would never find him. But he changed his mind. She nodded. Last night. After you confronted him, he called me and said he couldn't put you in danger. That if his father found him, anyone connected to him would be at risk. He said the kindest thing he could do was end our affair and probably end your marriage too. Push everyone away to keep them safe. I absorbed this information slowly, so he wasn't trying to save our marriage. He was trying to protect me by leaving me. Claire shrugged. Or he's a coward using his father as an excuse. I honestly don't know anymore. I left the coffee shop with more questions than answers. When I got home, David's car was in the driveway. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept. I met with Claire this morning, I said. He froze. Oh, she told me about your father, about the threats, about witness protection. He set down the coffee pot carefully. What else did she tell you? That you were planning to run away with her? That you changed your mind last night to protect me? He turned to face me. It's true, all of it. My father gets out in 4 weeks. He's going to come looking for me, and anyone I care about is in danger. So your plan is what? To divorce me and disappear? He looked miserable. I don't know. I don't have a plan. I just know I can't put you at risk. You should have thought of that before you married me, I said. Before you built a life with me under false pretenses. I know, he said quietly. You're right. I was selfish. I wanted the life I couldn't have. I wanted to be normal, to be loved, and I thought I could outrun my past. But you can't. No, he said. I can't. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd eaten dinner 2 weeks ago, before the phone calls started, before my world fell apart. I need the whole truth, I told him. Everything. No more lies. No more secrets. If we're going to figure this out, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. He sat down across from me. Okay, he said. What do you want to know? Start from the beginning. Your childhood, your family, everything. So he told me, and I listened. Michael Harrison grew up in Seattle as the youngest of 4 children. His father, Robert Harrison, owned a successful import-export business that was really a front for money laundering. His uncle ran the enforcement side. Collections, intimidation, worse. By the time Michael was 10, he understood that his family wasn't like other families, that the nice house and the private schools came from illegal activities. His oldest brother, Benjamin, died in a gang-related shooting when Michael was 12. His sister, Rachel, married one of their father's business associates and moved to Miami. His other brother, Thomas, went to prison for assault when Michael was 15 and died there 2 years later in a fight. I was the youngest and I was smart, Michael said. My father wanted me to go to college, get a business degree, come back and run the legitimate side of his operations, make everything look clean. But you didn't want that. I wanted out. I wanted a normal life. When I was 18, I told him I wasn't going into the family business. He said that was fine, I could do whatever I wanted. But there was this understanding that you don't really leave. You're always a Harrison, always part of it. When did it change? When I was 21, my father asked me to do him a favor. Drive a package to someone in Portland. Simple errand. I said yes because you don't say no to my father. Halfway there, I got pulled over for a broken taillight. The cop asked to search my car. I knew I couldn't say no without looking suspicious. They found 20 kilos of cocaine in the trunk. You were arrested? He shook his head. My father had cops on his payroll. The charges disappeared. But I understood then what I was really doing. I was a courier, a mule. And if I'd gone to a real cop, or if something had gone wrong, I'd have been the one going to prison while my father stayed clean. That's when you decided to testify. Not yet. I was too scared. I just tried to distance myself. Moved out of the family house. Got a job as a waiter. But my father kept pulling me back in. Little favors. Deliver this. Pick up that. Meet with this person. I felt trapped. Then when I was 24, the FBI came to my apartment. They knew about my father's business. They had wiretaps. They had evidence. But they wanted testimony from someone inside. Someone who could confirm the structure, the operations, the key players. They offered you a deal. They said if I cooperated, I wouldn't be charged with anything. I'd be protected. I could start over. It took me a week to decide. The hardest week of my life. Why did you say yes? He looked at me. Because I was 24 and I wanted a future. I wanted to be something other than a criminal's son. I wanted to fall in love and get married and have kids someday. Normal things. I couldn't do that as a Harrison. So I testified. I told them everything I knew. And my father went to prison. And your family blamed you. My sister hasn't spoken to me since. My mother, she tried to understand but eventually stopped calling. It hurt too much. And my father, he sent me one letter from prison. It said, "You betrayed your blood. You don't exist anymore. When I get out, you won't exist at all." A death threat. Michael nodded. The FBI took it seriously. They offered me witness protection. New name, new city, new identity. Everything monitored and controlled. But I'd already changed my name legally. I thought if I just moved far enough away, stayed quiet, I'd be fine. I was wrong. When did you move here? 6 years ago. I got a job at the tech company, kept my head down, and then I met you at that fundraiser. You were so different from anyone I'd known. You were kind. You didn't come from a world of violence and lies. You were just this amazing, normal person, and I fell in love with you, but you never told me. How could I? He asked. On our first date, was I supposed to say, by the way, my real name is Michael, and my father is a crime boss, and I'm basically in hiding? On our second date, our 10th, when we got engaged, there was never a good time, and the longer I waited, the harder it became, so you just decided to keep lying. I told myself it was to protect you, he said. If you didn't know, you couldn't be implicated. You couldn't be used against me. You'd be safe. But I wasn't safe, I said. I was married to you, under a false name, without knowing the danger I was in. That's not protection, Michael. That's selfishness. He didn't argue. You're right. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked the question I'd been dreading. What happens in 4 weeks when your father gets out? I don't know, he admitted. He'll try to find me. He has resources, even from prison. People who owe him favors. People who are afraid of him. And when he finds you, Michael's hands were shaking. I don't know. Maybe he just wants to talk. To understand why I did what I did. You don't believe that? No, he said quietly. I don't. So what are your options? He ticked them off on his fingers. 1, I run. Change my name again. Disappear completely. Leave everything behind, including you. 2, I go into witness protection. Same result, different process. 3, I stay and hope he doesn't find me or doesn't care anymore. 4, I reach out first. Try to make peace. And option 5? I asked. What's option 5? I tell the truth to everyone. I tell my family who I really married. I tell our friends. I go to the police and report the threats. I make it public. Make it so that if something happens to you, everyone knows exactly who's responsible. Remove his ability to make you disappear quietly. He stared at me. You'd do that? I don't know, I admitted. I'm still processing the fact that my husband isn't who he said he was. But if we're going to get through this, we can't do it with more lies. Are you saying you want to stay married? I'm saying I need time to think. But I also know that running and hiding hasn't worked for you. You've been running for 6 years and you're still terrified. Maybe it's time to stop running. Over the next few days, I did something I never thought I'd do. I researched Michael's father. The trial transcripts were public record. I read about Robert Harrison's crimes, money laundering, racketeering, witness intimidation. I read about the violence his organization had committed, people who'd been beaten, people who'd disappeared. I also found articles about Michael's testimony. It was sealed, but reporters had speculated about a family member cooperating with the prosecution. Some called him brave, others called him a traitor. The comment sections were brutal. I called my sister. We'd always been close, and I needed someone to talk to who wasn't involved. I told her everything. About Michael's real name, his past, his father, the affair with Claire, all of it. Holy shit, she said when I finished. Are you okay? I don't know how to answer that question, I admitted. Am I in danger? Is my life a lie? Do I even know who I married? What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to a lawyer first, find out what my options are, and then I'm going to decide if this marriage can be saved. The lawyer was straightforward. The marriage was legal despite the name issue. David had legally changed his name before we met, so there was no fraud. But if I wanted a divorce, I had grounds. Betrayal, infidelity, deception. It would be messy but doable. And if I want to stay? I asked. Then you need a post-nuptial agreement, she said. Full disclosure of his past, his real identity, any outstanding legal issues. Protection for you if something happens. And probably a consultation with a criminal defense attorney to understand your liability. My liability? If his father comes after him, you could be caught in the crossfire. Legally or literally. You need to protect yourself. I left her office feeling overwhelmed. That evening, Michael and I had our most honest conversation yet. I need you to understand something, I told him. If we stay married, things have to change. Complete transparency. No more secrets. Ever. About anything. I can do that, he said. I'm not finished. I also need you to go to the police. Report the threats from your father. Get a restraining order if possible. Create a paper trail. If something happens, there has to be evidence. He looked uncertain. That might make things worse. It might provoke him. Or it might protect you, I countered. Right now, he has all the power because you're hiding. If you make this official, if you make it public, you take some of that power back. He thought about this. Okay, I'll do it. And Claire, I said, you need to end things completely. No contact, no meetings, nothing. I already did, he said. I told her it was over. She's been calling, but I haven't answered. Good, because if this marriage has any chance, it has to be built on honesty. And that starts now. We sat down that night and he told me everything. Every detail of his childhood. Every job he'd done for his father. Every fear he'd carried. Every lie he'd told. I listened without judgment. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because I needed to know who I was really married to. The next day, we went to the police together. Michael filed a report about the threats from his father. The officer took it seriously, especially given Robert Harrison's criminal history. He said they'd pass the information to the parole board and to the FBI. No guarantees, but it was documented. That night, I lay in bed next to Michael. We hadn't been intimate since I'd found out. Hadn't really touched at all. But I reached over and took his hand. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said in the darkness. I don't know if this marriage can survive, but I'm willing to try. Because I think underneath all the lies, there's a person, Michael whispered. I promise you, 4 weeks passed. I started seeing a therapist to process it. Michael and I went to couples. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild trust. He showed me everything. His phone, his emails, his bank accounts. No more secrets. No more locked doors. And then the call came. Michael was at work. I was home, making dinner, when someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw a man I didn't recognize. Older, maybe 60, wearing an expensive suit. I didn't open the door. Who is it? I called through the wood. I'm looking for Michael Harrison, the man said. His voice was calm, controlled. I heard you married him. My blood went cold. I'm calling the police, I said. No need for that, the man replied. I just want to talk to my son. Tell him his father is out. Tell him we have unfinished business. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Through the door, I heard him laugh. You can't hide him forever, he said. I always find what belongs to me. Then he walked away. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They searched the area, but Robert Harrison was gone. They stationed a car outside our house for the night. I called Michael. He left work immediately. When he got home, he looked terrified. He found me, Michael said. It's over. No, I said firmly. It's not over. We report this. We document it. We fight back. You don't understand, he said. My father doesn't give up. He'll keep coming until he gets what he wants. Then we stop giving him the option, I said. We go public. We tell everyone who he is and what he's done. We make it impossible for him to hurt you without consequences. Michael looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You'd really do that? Put yourself at risk for me? You're my husband, I said. For better or worse. Right now this is worse. But I'm not running, and neither are you. Over the next week, we made a plan. We contacted the FBI. We talked to the media. We made Michael's story public. Former crime family member who testified against his father now being targeted after father's release from prison. The story went viral. Suddenly, Robert Harrison couldn't make a move without scrutiny. His parole officer was watching him. The FBI was monitoring him. Journalists were following his every step. The pressure mounted, and something unexpected happened. Rachel, Michael's sister, reached out. She'd seen the news coverage. She wanted to talk. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I went with him. Rachel looked older than her photos, worn down by years of her own struggles. I'm sorry, she told Michael. I'm sorry I blamed you for testifying. I'm sorry I cut you out of my life. You did the right thing. I just couldn't see it then. Michael's eyes filled with tears. I thought you hated me. I did, she admitted. For a long time. But I've spent 10 years watching our father destroy lives from prison, watching our family fall apart. And I realized you were the only one brave enough to try to stop it. They talked for 2 hours. She told him about her life in Miami, about her own attempts to distance herself from the family name, about their mother, who was in poor health but still alive. And then she told him something that changed everything. Dad's sick, she said. Liver cancer. He's dying. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe less. That's why they let him out early. Compassionate release. Michael sat back in his chair. He's dying? Rachel nodded. And I think that's why he came to find you. Not for revenge, for closure. He's an old man facing his mortality, and he wants to make peace with his son before he dies. Michael looked at me. I don't know if I can do that. You don't have to, I said. Not for him, but maybe for yourself. So you're not carrying this for the rest of your life. 2 days later, Michael agreed to meet his father, supervised in a public place, with me present. Robert Harrison arrived in a wheelchair, oxygen tank beside him. He looked nothing like the man who'd come to our door. He looked frail, dying. Michael, he said. His voice was weak. Thank you for seeing me. Michael sat across from him, tense. What do you want? To apologize, Robert said. For the life I gave you, for the choices I made, for putting you in a position where you had to choose between loyalty and conscience. You made the right choice. I was too proud to see it then, but I see it now. Michael didn't respond. The silence stretched. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Robert continued. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. You got out. You built a real life. You found someone who loves you. His eyes flicked to me. You did what I never could. You broke the cycle. Michael's jaw was tight. You sent me a letter. You said I wouldn't exist when you got out. Robert nodded slowly. I was angry, bitter. I spent 10 years in a cell thinking about revenge. But when they told me I was dying, all that anger seemed pointless. I don't have time for revenge anymore. I just wanted to see my son one last time. They talked for an hour. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was closure. When we left, Michael was crying, not out of sadness, but out of release. He'd been carrying this weight for so long, and finally, he could set it down. Robert Harrison died 5 months later. Michael didn't go to the funeral, but Rachel called to tell us about it. Small service, she said. Just family, or what's left of it. After his death, something shifted in Michael. He was lighter somehow. The fear that had shadowed him for years was finally gone. He started using his real name again, legally changing back to Michael. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He wanted to own his past instead of hiding from it. Our marriage didn't magically fix itself. We still had hard days. Days when I looked at him and remembered all the lies. Days when trust felt impossible. But slowly, we rebuilt. Session by session with our therapist. Conversation by conversation. Choice by choice, to be honest. I never spoke to Claire again. I heard through mutual friends that she'd left the company and moved to another state. I hope she found what she was looking for. 2 years later, Michael and I are still together. We're not the same people we were. I'm not the naive wife who believed her husband without question. He's not the man running from his past. We're something new, something built on truth. People ask me sometimes why I stayed, why I didn't leave when I found out about the lies and the affair and the secret life. The answer isn't simple. I stayed because I saw who he could be when he stopped hiding. I stayed because love isn't just about the good days. It's about choosing each other even on the hard ones. I stayed because the man I fell in love with was real, even if his name wasn't. And sometimes, late at night, when Michael is asleep beside me, I think about that first phone call, the woman asking for Michael, the beginning of the end of our old life, the catalyst for everything that came after. I'm glad she called. Not because I enjoyed the pain, but because you can't build a real life on false foundations. Eventually, the truth finds its way to the surface. Eventually, you have to face who you really are and who you're really with. We're facing it now, together. And for the first time in our marriage, it's real.